Hi everybody, this is Tor Stoli and I am back with another video. And in this video, I thought I will take a look at how you can call one of these new great and fancy natural language models from your Python code. So what we will do is we will create a Colab notebook with references to the Openai GPT-3 libraries and models. So we want to create this notebook, and we'll go through some examples. And before we do that, I just wanted to show you where you can find the OpenAI's GPT-3 models. So if you open up your web page at beta.openai.com playground, you're going to end up on this page here. And it might be a little less fancy looking than your Chat GPT is. So here you can see you can go and link directly to Chat GPT. But it's basically the underlying models that was used to create Chat GPT. So for example, the GPT-3 models, as you can see over here in this right side of this web page, there are different kind of models listed. There's some that are very good at code and writing code and understanding code. So for example, this code DaVinci-002 is really good for that. There's also other models that are been trained, but they might be faster and cheaper to use if you have a paid subscription here. The text DaVinci-003 is the most recent creation of these GPT-3 models. So the GPT-3 with reinforcement learning and human feedback was used to create this text DaVinci-003. So it's also called Instruct GPT. Now, if you take this model here and then you add some safety and alignment layer on the top of it, which with what OpenAI did, that created what is called the Chat GPT. So Chat GPT is laying on the top of these models, particularly this text DaVinci-003. So that's just a little bit about these models, and there are some other ones that have been created. And if you're interested in learning more about the different kind of models, you can go to Wikipedia, for example, and you can look up what is Chat GPT. And if you look here, you can see they give you a description of what it is and when it came out and all kinds of stuff here. And also, of course, you can also open up the GPT-3 and learn more about that. For example, it's kind of interesting to look at. It can basically use up to 2,048 token long context and 175 billion parameters in this model, and it requires 800 gigabytes of storage. So basically what happened with these models is they were trained over a long time, and then used the internet to obtain a lot of data to train on. And if you look here, for example, you can see that the GPT training data used about 60% or 410 billion tokens in Common Crawl, whatever that is, and some books and Wikipedia. So here's how they kind of train this thing. And then they cut it off from the internet. So you can't really go out to Google and get answers. So once these models are trained, they're done. You disconnect them and you can't really train them again over them. So they're trained and then they're kind of frozen, if you will. All right, so that's a little bit about the GPT models and the Chat GPT and the relationship between them. So what we're going to be doing is I'm going to be focusing in on how I can connect to these models. So let us just take quickly a look at this interface here. So what you probably want to do is you want to go to this documentation, and there's quick start tutorials. and it will tell you what these kind of models can do and how you can actually connect to them. It tells you that you need a security key or token. You can go and get that. And also, it kind of takes you through this tutorial so you can see kind of how these models work. And you can try it out. So here's like an example, and you click. So when you click what suggests 3 names for an animal that is a superhero, and you click it, you can see it comes back with this. And depending how you set up these the parameters, you will get different results. For example, here's one with a temperature. That means it's very creative when it's a 1. If it's 0, it's very repetitive and it doesn't change much. So you can run that. And another thing you can do is you can look at the models themselves. There'll be a brief description of what they can do and what they're good for. So I suggest you take some time and read through this. And, there's plenty of information here that you can go through. Another very interesting thing is that you probably should do, because it gets tricky with all these settings here because they mean different things. Like the temperature is pretty straightforward because that's, how creative you want it to be. But then you have like stop sequences. Then you have this top P, which controls diversity via nucleus sampling. So it's really easy to kind of get lost. Best way probably to get started is to go into these presets. And if I look, for example, at explain code, you can see here is a bunch of code text. And at the bottom here, it has like 3 quotes. So if you look at the stop sequence, for example, it uses those 3 quotes as a stop sequence. But it gives you the code DaVinci 002 model is what you should probably use for this. So it gives you an idea of how you can actually get started with this stuff. So I just wanted to show you this, and now we're going to get back and go in and look at that Colab Notebook. So in order to use Colab, you should Google Colab. And as you can see here, the first one that shows up is Google Colab. You need an account. You need a Google account in order to use it. So what you can do is you can just click here, and it will take you to wherever you're going. And you see you can have a new notebook, or you can just read up a little bit about it if it's new to you. Now, I happen to create this notebook already, so it looks like this. So what I'll do is I'll go through this and explain it a little bit, and then we'll look at a few examples. So the first thing you need to do is to go to Openai and get a security key, a token. And what you'll do is you'll probably, put it somewhere on your computer and make sure that you save it, because once you get the token from Openai, there's no guarantee that you will ever see it again. So make sure you save it to a text file or something on your computer. Now, I happen to have it in my computer on my desktop. So let me just open that up. And what happens is I have this key. So what I can do is I can open up this table here, go to the folder here, and I'm going to grab my security key and just drop it right here. Now this will, all that's in here is the, cryptic key value, and that's all that's in this file here. So what happens is I attach this now, but it won't stay there permanently. So every time you open this and create a new runtime or what have you, this key will disappear, which is probably good because you probably only want to use it while you're doing this. So it's not going to be out there. So I drag that in here, and now I can just close this. And the first thing you need to do is you need to pip install the Openai bindings from Openai, Python bindings, I should say. So let's run that now and make sure we have that in our Colab. So I'll let this run for a second and then we'll return. I'm just going to clear this output so it's a little easier to look at. All right, so the next thing we want to do is we're going to import the Openai module. So let's run that, and that's now in here. Then all I'm doing in this third cell here is to simply get a hold of that key that is in that text file. And then you use the Openai module and you use a text string here, to load the value of the key into it. So that calls this function and passes on this file name. So that's all that happens here. So now we can run this. Okay, and then we'll run the key. Now this is the function we're going to use that's going to do all the heavy lifting. So we're going to basically call this from any cell below here. And all it is a function. It's called call OpenAI. We're going to pass in some parameters, and these parameters are available if you go into the OpenAI or GPT-3, and there's some code examples and stuff that will list this stuff, so you should be able to find this. And so it expects a search prompt. It also expects you to provide an engine. There are several engines involved here, and the one that is the latest and greatest right now for text, for natural language processing, is this Text DaVinci 003 module. And I think it was trained with data up through June 2021, if I remember right. I'll put some links in and you can read up on your own. There are some parameters it's using. The temperature is basically how creative you allow it to be. It's between 0 and 1. And if you want something that is repeatable over and over, you get the same result. You set it to 0. If you want, maybe expect more random answers as you try different things, you can set it higher. I think the default is like 0.7, if I remember right. And all of these parameters here is, you need to go into the website and read up on how to use this stuff. There's also, depending which module you use, you can use up to, I think it's 2,000 tokens or something some of these modules can use. In any event, there is on the OpenAI website, you can go in and look at the meaning of the parameters there. So these are the levers, so to speak, that you can toggle and use to improve your module or try out a different scenario. So that's in this documentation here, and as you can see, they kind of go through and they also discuss their models, what they're good at, and how they came up with this and so forth. So yeah, there's some good information here and you should check it out. And I also will include in this video some links to some other good sources for information about this. So now this is the main function. Like I said, you have a prompt and you are returning basically a text string. That's what it comes back as, is text string. So that's the one we're returning here. So how do we use this stuff? Well, okay, let's try out the language module, which is the Text DaVinci 003, which is the latest and greatest of the GPT-3 models. There's a prompt, and you give them some information, and then you can set how creative should you make it. And then let's run this prompt. And then I'm going to basically here create an output variable that calls that big function that I just listed above. And it passes in the prompt, the engine I want to use, and the temp I want to use. So you could, for each time you run this, you can add more of these parameters to it that will just override these default values that are set into this function. So here's running, and I'm just printing out the engine. And here's what it came back with. So let's see. I asked to give 5 really funny jokes about web developers that will make me laugh out loud. Okay, let me see if I laugh out loud here. What did the web developer say when he found a bug in his code? Oh dear, I'm debugging. Okay. Okay, so here's a bunch of what did he say when he ran out of ideas. Time to Google it. When he found an error in his code. 404, not funny. Project was late. I'm running behind schedule. So obviously, unless you have a very strange sense of humor, this is not very funny at all. So I don't think I'm going to go to this natural language processing to get good jokes. I don't think I'll probably be very depressed if I read more of these jokes. So I'm going to skip that one. So the next one here is, I want to see if it can figure out calculations of converting degrees into decimals, latitude and longitude. And I'm going to use the Text DaVinci 003 model and make it creative enough to come up with something. So let me run that now and see what it gives me. So here is what it produced. It says, first example, it gives me some degrees, 37 degrees, 36 minutes, 15 seconds. Okay, so let's see how we came up with this calculation here. So it says take the degrees, the 37 degrees, 36 minutes over 60, so that's correct here. And then 15 seconds over 3,600 seconds in an hour, so that seems to be correct. Now, I can't do this math on top of my head here, but you can do a calculator and see if that actually adds up. But it did actually show me two examples here, and it gave me the degrees, and it also shows me the calculation of how it arrived at those calculations. So that's pretty interesting. So let's try it again, since we're dealing with the text. Now let's see if I can find some albums tracks. Now the reason this is a little more interesting is because of the way I construct the query here. I use a new line character here, and then I'm looking for a list of albums, the name of the album and the year, and then I want to see the songs on these albums by AC/DC. So I'm going to set the temperature to 0. I don't want a lot of creativity here. I want the exact answers. And I'm also putting in the stop for new line. And I'm just opting up some number of tokens. I don't really know if I need all this or not, but I'm just doing it. So let's run this one and see what it produces. Notice I printed out on the first one here so you can see the how I structure this. So I have the question here, and then I kind of construct it with indentions and parentheses, and then I put a little dash there because I kind of want it in the list format. So let's see what it does. Now let me run this, and then we'll still it and watch the output. So it finished. I came back with the answers here. Notice that it did put the list of albums, the name of the album, and followed by the parenthesis and year. So it did do that, and the colon. And then the songs, it didn't really list songs, but it did this little dash for each song, as you can see. So that's pretty cool. Now, sorted by year released in ascending order. So it started in 1975, 1976, 1977. So it did that. I'm not sure about all these albums, how many songs are in each of these albums. So you might need some fine tuning here to see if that is actually all of the songs. I'm not sure. I can't tell if I'm just looking at this. But it did kind of produce it in the order that I expected to see it in, which is kind of cool. Some of these other models, one of them is called Babbage 101. So if you look at the Babbage model, let's just grab this guy and see. So if I go to models and I look at this text, Babbage 001 is capable of straightforward tasks, very fast, and it also says lower cost. And you can see it has quite a bit of tokens you can have too. This is trained up on data up through 2019. If I look at the Babbage model here, it can perform straightforward tasks like simple classification. It's also quite capable when it comes to semantic search ranking, how well documents match up with search criteria. So that's a different model. So let me try that guy out. So I say, provide me 5 tips for a successful database developer. And I want to use that model and want to be a little creative. And I'm given the stop and the number of tokens here. So let me run that. And let me run the prompt here so we can see what we're getting. And it came back right away. It was very fast. And here is the tips it gave me. Learn the ins and outs of SQL. Well, no kidding. I mean, you can't really do much without knowing SQL. So that was kind of an obvious one. Get good at understanding and using databases internals. Practice your skills with real-world data. Okay. Use the correct tools for the job. Work with a team to ensure success. Let's try the DaVinci and see what we're getting here instead of the Babbage. So DaVinci, and let's do the 003, which is the latest and greatest. And let's see what that one will produce. So here's the result for that guy, and I'll put him into a notepad so I can have it for later. So this one is the Previous one, learn the basics. Okay. Understand the business needs. So it gives you a lot more text here, right? Some of it's pretty obvious. You need to know SQL. You test your code. Well, of course not. We'll never test. We'll put it right in production. Yeah, some of the tips that came back with. So it's a matter of experimenting a little bit, I guess. Okay, so that's that one. I tried this thing here, but the answer I'm getting is so horrible that I don't even know if it's going to do it. So let me run this code DaVinci. So this is based on the codex. Now, it's very vague here, what I'm specifying. So if you want a much better one, you should probably produce some kind of example and stuff, and it might give you much better results. So if you want to get into writing code or do text to code or stuff like that, then you might want to go and do a little more research, because this is not going to do much for you. So let me just run it so you can see what I mean. So I'm running the code DaVinci 002, which is specifically trained on code. So as you can see, it produced a bunch of nonsense. It says the list of employees should be a comma separate list of employee names. Yeah, so that's kind of what it gave me. So I'm sure we can do a much better job if you just formulate this much better than this and can maybe give an example. Creating like JavaScript code and Python code is supposed to be pretty good at. All right, so let's test it and see if it can actually create some kind of database design. And I'm going to use the text DaVinci 003 here. Specific prompt I'm using here is create a SQL Server 2016 database. I'm very precise here. Database design, including tables, data types with null and not null values, primary and foreign key relationships between the tables for a web e-commerce store. And then I have this new line character at the end here. So I don't want variations on this. I want, a fixed answer. So I'm setting the temp to 0. And then let's just run this and see what we're getting. So I'm going to run it and still it and wait for it to finish. So it finished, and let's see what it did. Okay, so it's supposed to create a database design for me, including data types with primary and foreign key relationships. So okay, it came up with a products table, which is probably important if you're going to sell stuff. So it has a product ID, and it's an int, and it's a not null because it shouldn't be null because it's the key identifier for the table. So that's good. It's a primary key. It created a product name, product description, and a price. And the price is decimal, which is good because, usually you have a price with dollars and cents if you're here in the US. And then it has a category table, category ID, the primary key, and a category name, and it's not null. And then let's see, now that we're getting into product categories. So here we're going to put categories together with the product. You create a link table. So sure enough, it creates a new index value for the table itself, a primary key. But then it refers to the product ID up here as a foreign key, which is good, and it's an int, so it's the same type, and a category D going back to this categories table, so that's good. So it has orders table, order details, customer. So I suspect it picked this up from the internet, or from probably some kind of basic SQL Server, AdventureWorks or something like that is floating out there on Stack Overflow or someplace like that. So, but it did a decent job here of coming back with stuff. Sometimes you got to be wary though, because it sometimes cuts off, when it scripts it out. And so you got to make sure that you get the complete stuff. But it did a pretty decent job here. So, all right, I just wanted to show you that. And by the way, if you want to look at this output character that comes back from the function call, you can just do a type on it. And as expected, it's a class string. So it's this big string variable coming back. And that's what you see printed out here. Okay, I hope you like this video. And if you do like it, and please subscribe to my channel if you like it. And I'll be back with another video soon. Thank you so much.